Afternoon, everybody. It is June 1st, 2026, and we are covering all of the major events that happened over the weekend, Trump's peace deal and the Israel strikes on Tyre, Lebanon, as well as the potential strikes to come on Beirut, Lebanon, which Donald Trump, he attempted to make a peace agreement, which is potentially in the process. But Israel has also said that they're going to persist in their efforts to continue fighting what they believe to be Hezbollah and everything else that's going on. We're also going to be covering the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, for the fiscal year of 2027, which is HR 8800, if you didn't hear about it, which is going to be the merging of the United States military and the Israeli military. And why this is not such a good thing? Well, who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, maybe it's because we've never done this before, and all of this would be new to the United States. We're also going to be covering Iran seeking to potentially close the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea now. So not only the Strait of Hormuz is going to be potentially closed of all kind of traffic or flow through, but it's also going to be potentially the Red Sea if Israel does not stop their efforts to take Lebanon, which is not really in the interest of Prime Minister Netanyahu, as we know. And then, of course, we're also going to cover the markets, and we're going to be covering all of the other big stories on X that are happening. It's huge. So really big weekend. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And let's get right into the news. So again, this was pretty huge. This is this happened today, this morning, or yesterday. But they do not want people knowing about it. Pretty big. Again, I posted this on my YouTube channel. Kind of put together these clips. Israeli airstrike hits hospital vicinity in Tyre, Lebanon. Shocking footage. Viewer discretion is advised. And the reason I'm showing you this is because, again, this is the big news of the weekend. And this is potentially what is going to possibly end this entire peace agreement between Iran and Trump, which could potentially end this entire war. But with all of this happening, with Israel attempting to take Lebanon, and again, they've wanted to take the Golan Heights, they want to take Nabateh, and all of these different areas, obviously we know that this is probably not going to stop anytime soon. We hope it does, of course. We don't want this war to continue, and we want human life to survive, whether it's the Israelis or whether it's the Lebanese people, whether it's the Palestinians. We want everybody to survive. This war cannot go on because it is not good for the sanctity of our country. And again, continuing this war doesn't help anybody, really. Ultimately, where it's going to leave us is in a position where we have no more allies. Okay, and so we have to look at that from a position of open source intelligence. So again, this is a little bit of information on, again, the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, HR 8800, for the year 2027. And so he breaks it down. I also posted this on my YouTube channel. Check out our YouTube shorts, and you're going to get all of the biggest news that's happening really in short form content. But we follow it all. So again, follow Ecker Geopolitics, subscribe to Ecker Geopolitics on YouTube, and you'll be able to check out these shorts.
They are trying to take over our country.
And Israeli troops have captured...
Hold on. Of course. Where is it?
And Israeli...
That was also big news as well. YouTube Shorts is just honestly the worst. Okay, I had this all lined up, and then it totally lost my spot. And before we get totally lost my spot. The word. It's so annoying.
Make no mistake.
Now I gotta find it. There it
is. They are trying to take
Sorry.
over our country.
Okay, hold on. I'm just not gonna be able to zoom in on it apparently.
There's an
What?
I think the word Jesus.
I don't know why YouTube is just.
They are
ridiculous.
trying to take over our country.
We'll just watch it here.
Congress quietly moves to integrate U.S. and Israeli militaries.
To put it bluntly, they want our military to be theirs, okay? The 2027 National Defense Authorization Act would, quote, all but fuse the two countries' armed forces together. And that is only one of a laundry list of items that Israel has taken to try to take over our country.
Quite a year for Israel. Buy TikTok and censor. Buy CBS and censor. Buy CNN and censor. Buy influencers. Charlie Kirk gets killed. TPUSA becomes more Israel. Geofence churches. 1,000 pastors become Israel ambassadors. Replace MTG with pro-Israel. Replace Massey with pro-Israel.
Once again, it's Israel's world, and we are
pretty
just
big,
living in it.
pretty crazy information at the end of the day. But yeah, we had a lot of other news that happened this weekend. And again, I wanted to cover just some of these different stories. Again, this is just days ago. And this is what Trump had said on the Iran war. We're making a great deal. Otherwise, we'll just go back and finish it off militarily.
What does a good deal look like for you?
Well, first of all, there's no deal that's good enough because the media will cover it. And we're making a great deal. We're going to make it a great deal. Or we'll just go back and finish it off militarily. But this would go faster. It's probably better on a humane standpoint. There's something nice about it also. You know, save a lot of lives.
Yeah, we should maybe
whether
end
it's
this
the
war
other
as soon as
side or
possible,
not, you save a
President
lot
Trump.
of lives. But we're close to a very good deal, and if we can make it good, otherwise we just start up with the Department of War, as we call it. And it's been very successful. You saw Venezuela. It was a one-day win, and this is really a win already. We've defeated their military, essentially defeated their military. I would rather get a deal because we can open the strait immediately upon signing. The one guarantee that I have to have is that there will be no nuclear weapons. They've agreed to that. And it was very interesting. They originally said, we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, well, what happens if you buy a nuclear weapon? So now it says we will not develop or in any way purchase a military weapon. That's a big difference. So we're getting what we want slowly. Very tough negotiators. It takes a long time. I'm in no hurry. I'd like to say I'm in a hurry because, you know, gasoline prices are going to come tumbling down. But if you're going to be in a hurry, you're not going to make a good deal. And slowly but surely, we're getting, I think, what we want. And if we don't get what we want, we're going to end it a different way.
And so, yeah, so when we look at all of these stories, again, we have the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which essentially gives Israel a merging ability, a fusion of the United States military and the Israeli military. And what this would allow is for them to have all the access to our classified information, classified technology, everything that we're already doing and building, and they would have full information and full access to our nuclear codes, all of it. And so essentially, that's kind of dangerous because when we look at this situation, we've seen over the years, Jonathan Pollard, for example, was one of the individuals who sold, U.S. nuclear secrets to a lot of our enemies in those days. So these are things that we have to consider as Americans, as a sovereign nation. We've never done this before in history. We've never had an agreement with another country where we were going to essentially, sell out our entire military in order to fuse with Israel. So it's very interesting when we look at all of that. Iran stops negotiations with U.S. vows to completely block the Strait of Hormuz. Again, that's state media. Iranian negotiators will stop exchanging messages with the U.S. through intermediaries in retaliation for ongoing ceasefire violations, Iran's state-affiliated news outlet Tasnim said. Tehran will also move to fully block the Strait of Hormuz, Tasnim reported, and oil prices leapt more than 7% higher following Tasnim's report. So again, Iranian negotiators will stop exchanging messages with the U.S. through intermediaries, and Tehran will move fully towards the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation for ongoing ceasefire violations, Iran's state-affiliated news outlet and Tasnim said Monday. The report, in a translated post on the social media site Telegram, homed in Israel's military operations in Lebanon against the Iran-backed militia Hezbollah. No dialogue will take place until Israel fully withdraws from occupied areas in Lebanon and stops all attacks in both Lebanon and Gaza, per Tasnim. Also, the Resistance Front and Iran have resolved to completely block the Strait of Hormuz and activate other fronts, including the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, in order to punish the Zionists and their supporters. Again, that is from CNBC News. They wrote that. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait is a trade choke point that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. Oil prices leapt more than 7% higher following Tasnim's report, which signaled a breakdown in efforts to reach a diplomatic end to the war that is now in its fourth month. Okay, so when we look at a lot of this news, pretty big.
One of the main question marks at the moment is how long this is going to last. But I think more important is how we end this situation. Are we going into a comprehensive deal where we go back to the pre-war scenario where traffic in the Strait of Hormuz fully reopens, or we are leaving the situation in a narrow deal where questions are unanswered, where the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran retains some leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. So I think that is the main
that's very
question
likely
here, and we are seeing supply reacting to high oil prices. We are more optimistic on U.S. shale production growth, for example, for this year and next year, and we're also more optimistic on other shale producers such as Argentina, Venezuela, probably. So we are going to see some significant impact on the supply side in the coming months as well.
When it comes to the response from governments and what this means in terms of energy security, it's something you're looking at. You say the biggest story is that energy security is back. And that is fascinating because we were having a conversation earlier about major oil companies, energy companies here in the UK pulling back from the renewable story. How do you think governments are going to ultimately respond around energy security? And do you see...
Wow, that's crazy. If you read this, again, Rystad Energy said if the U.S.-Iran fighting resumes, oil prices could spike to around $180 a barrel this summer. If you've been watching my live stream, I've been saying since pretty much the beginning of this war in February that those oil prices could go up to at least $200 a barrel. So we'll see what happens, but with Israel's intent to continue the war in Lebanon, it doesn't look like this war is going to wrap up anytime soon. So potentially, maybe these oil prices could go higher. It's something to pay attention to.
Point where renewables have to be part of the answer.
I think that's a great question. For us, the main takeaway from this energy crisis is that energy security becomes a priority for governments. But let's not forget that energy security means very different things for different types of countries. So if I think of a country that is resource capable, such as the UK, what we think would happen is that those countries will try to incentivize domestic fossil fuel production as an optionality hedge, if you want. But you also have some other countries that don't have the resource capability. We're thinking about Spain, France, for example, where the only option to increase security is through a faster deployment of renewables. And then you have the net exporters of fossil fuels, Saudi Arabia, Russia. For those countries, energy security actually means trying to secure security of demand, that there is a market for those barrels flowing in the future. So it really depends on how we look like. And I think that the main takeaway here is that the speed of the energy transition, I think, is going to get a little bit messier as a consequence of the war. I don't think it's going to accelerate. Actually, what we're likely to see is that we're going to see different speed of acceleration in the energy transition, depending on the endowment of the different countries.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
We're looking at the oil price next year now, $94 a barrel for the August contract for Brent crude, and $90 for the July contract for US crude. Are those prices realistic in terms of taking into account the factors as they stand on the ground now? And in all honesty, can we guarantee that there would actually
I think the prices are going to go higher, personally. I think those prices are going to, again, go at least above $110 to potentially $180 a barrel as we continue on. Again, just because from what I've been seeing over this past weekend, it does appear that this war is likely to continue. Not because Trump wants it to continue necessarily, but because the Israelis appear to have some kind of stronghold over this decision-making process. They seem to continue going forth with all of it.
Supply available to meet those contracts?
Again, it very much depends on the duration of the contract. We've run some very interesting scenarios, and let's assume that there is no deal and fighting restarts between U.S. and Iran, and we're seeing a scenario of $180 per barrel by August, and that will mean a severe global
he just said what I said.
Recession, particularly in Europe, particularly in emerging Asia. So that's the extreme scenario. We also have the other scenario where there is a comprehensive deal tomorrow where suddenly the U.S. and Iran agree on everything, including the nuclear question, including the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. In that world, prices will rapidly come down to around $70 per barrel by the end of the year. So I think
that's wishful thinking, though, because when we understand what the Iranians have already said, they want all sanctions released from the Iranians. They want no more sanctions put on them. They also want all of their money unfrozen, which Trump has not been willing to do any of that. And they are unwilling to have no nuclear program whatsoever. They're not willing to stop their enrichment program, which, again, in any case, they were willing to comply with some form of compliance when it comes to the Abraham Accords. But now that, again, Israel is continuing this siege on Lebanon and the southern front of Lebanon, the Golan Heights, then it doesn't appear that this is going to end anytime soon. And so, again, it's very wishful thinking from what he's saying. When we look at some of these other stories, Iran halts talks with the U.S., and it says it could close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So again, when we look at all of this happening, we have to understand that there's really not a likely chance that any of this is going to end anytime soon when we're looking at this. Iran has suspended all exchanges with mediators to end the war with the U.S. and a result of Israel's escalating attacks on Lebanon. The Tasnim news agency reported on Monday. Given the continuing crimes of the Zionist regime, Israel, in Lebanon, and considering that Lebanon was one of the preconditions for the ceasefire and that this ceasefire has now been violated on all fronts, including Lebanon, the Iranian negotiating team is suspending dialogues and exchanges of texts through mediators, Tasnim reported. Again, Tasnim said that Iran wants an immediate cessation of Israel's military operations in Gaza and Lebanon. Tasnim, which is close to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, said that Iran and its allies had set their determination to completely block the Strait of Hormuz and activate other fronts, including the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the entrance of the Red Sea. Iran's threat to blockade the Bab el-Mandeb Strait would mark an escalation in its steps to inflict pain on the global economy in order to force the U.S. into concessions. So from an open source intelligence standpoint, when we're looking at this war, the Iranians are targeting the choke points, because the longer the Americans, the United States, and Israel continue this war, it affects the entire global economy. And this is Iran's strategy. They are going to keep the choke points basically closed and keep this entire economy basically at a standstill, to where everybody begins to blame the United States and Israel for continuing this war when it's affecting gas prices everywhere, right? A lot of states in the United States, the gas prices are up at $4.55 here in Michigan. And so where are the gas prices where you live, at least in America? And again, this is affecting every country. And so these choke points are really the strategy of Iran right now. Oil prices, which have been trending down the last month on its expectations of a deal, shot higher on Monday. Brent, the international benchmark, was up 6.7%, trading at $97.28 per barrel. The report comes after U.S. Central Command said it launched fresh strikes on Iran over the weekend, with Kuwait saying it faced missile and drone strikes targeting U.S. forces inside the countries in retaliation. The fragile ceasefire of the two sides struck in April has been on life support for weeks. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Friday that he was prepared to lift his blockade of the Strait of Hormuz if Iran surrendered its enriched uranium and committed not to charge a toll in Hormuz. Iran rejected those terms. And again, they've been continuing to reject those terms. So again, when we look at these other articles, this kind of happened today. 14 killed in Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon amid ceasefire violations. 2 were killed and 23 were injured in the strike near Jabal Amel Hospital in Tyre, Lebanese media says. At least 14 people were killed and dozens were injured on Monday in a series of Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon in the latest deadly violation of an ongoing ceasefire agreement. An Israeli strike hit a building and a parking lot at the Marka Junction near Jabal Amel Hospital in Tyre, killing 2 people and injuring 23 others, the state news agency NDAA said. The attack caused extensive damage to the hospital, according to an Anadolu reporter. 1 person was killed and another wounded in an Israeli strike in the town of Shabayai in the Tyre district, NNA said. A drone strike hit a vehicle on the Zefta Nabate Road, killing the driver and injuring a medic who was nearby, the outlet said. 2 more people were killed when an Israeli drone strike struck their vehicle and in the southern town of Barika, while a Syrian national was killed in a separate strike near the Sheikh Raghab Harb Hospital in the town of Tol. 5 people were also killed in the overnight Israeli airstrikes in the town of Kfar Sir in southern Lebanon, the NNA said. Another Israeli strike killed 2 people in the town of Zebdin, the same source said. Israel has continued its attacks in Lebanon despite the ceasefire that took effect on April 17th and was extended for 45 days following the indirect talks mediated by the U.S. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, the Israeli attacks since March 2nd have killed more than 3,400 people across the country. Writing by Rania Abu Shamala and Rasa Evrasenal in Istanbul. So again, this was very big news today, and that kind of broke out. And then meanwhile, Trump told CNBC, "I don't care if Iran negotiations are over." President Donald Trump said CNBC's Eamon Javers, I don't care if peace negotiations with Iran are over. Trump told CNBC he was going to ask Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu what's going on with Lebanon. Trump said he wasn't worried about oil prices, which spiked following a report that Iran will completely block the Strait of Hormuz in addition to halting negotiations with the U.S. And again, so Donald Trump made a Truth Social statement on this, specifically talking about this. And again, when we look at this, we have to understand that this entire thing is really what's continuing all of this. Trump said earlier today, 1 hour ago actually, I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu today asking him not to go into a major raid of Beirut, Lebanon. He turned his troops around. Thank you, Bibi. I also had a conversation with representatives of the leaders of Hezbollah, and they agreed to stop shooting at Israel and its soldiers. Likewise, Israel agreed to stop shooting at them. Let's see how long that lasts. Hopefully, it will be for eternity. President Donald J. Trump. And then I had responded to Trump. I said, Netanyahu and the Israelis are playing you for a fool, Mr. President. You must threaten Netanyahu and the Israelis with sanctions and no more funding or military aid if they continue to belittle your direct orders. America is the superpower, not Israel. If Israel is not stopped, your legacy and reputation will be destroyed by them forever, as will the reputation of the United States. They must be put in check. And so again, the reason I said that is because Benjamin Netanyahu ended up saying at 3:32 p.m. today, June 1st, 2026, tonight I spoke with President Trump and told him that if Hezbollah does not cease attacking our cities and citizens, Israel will attack targets in Beirut. Really, Hezbollah's been on defense when we actually look at these. When we look at this war with Israel versus Lebanon, Hezbollah has been really more of the defense factor here. This stance of ours remains unchanged. In parallel, the IDF will continue to operate as planned in southern Lebanon. So again, Netanyahu literally says that they're not going to stop if these attacks on them continue. And again, this was just in their perception. And again, this is from Ben Gvir of Israel. Mr. Prime Minister, you said that a strong prime minister tells the President of the United States yes when possible and no when necessary. This is the time to tell our friend President Trump no. Now is the time to do what is required and necessary to strike Hezbollah, to unleash the hands of our fighters, and to restore security to the north. End quote. That is from Ben Gvir, who is very close to the Knesset and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. So their plans, they have no intention of stopping anytime soon. Okay, and again, that received 893,000 views because that whole statement alone by Netanyahu basically said that we're going to continue this war and you're not going to stop us if we want to continue it. And again, they did say, oh, well, it's if they continue to strike us, but it's actually been the reverse opposite of that. If we've been analyzing the war, we can understand that the Israelis have been attacking Hezbollah and the Israelis have really been striking Lebanon first, right? We actually have another short here before we get into this story that I did want to go through. And again, this kind of covers another big story that the Israelis did just recently.
And Israeli troops have captured a strategic mountain in Lebanon with a Crusader-built castle. France has requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council following this escalation.
Again, this was just
Castle
yesterday.
is a UNESCO-protected heritage site that Israel occupied for 18 years before withdrawing in 2000. Now, this is the deepest invasion into the country in more than a quarter century, the military said on Sunday. And the castle has long been seen as a strategic military position because it overlooks large parts of the Litani River Valley. It's about 8 kilometers from the city of Nabatea, which has been under frequent Israeli attacks.
So again, big news. Okay, that was actually a Knights Templars Crusader castle here, and the Israelis had taken that over. So right now, the Israelis are moving forth with Blitzkrieg, as the Nazis used to believe that this is actually what the strategy and the military movement of Blitzkrieg is all about. It's quick movement, fast movement, and essentially shock and awe, all of it combined. So again, not comparing them to those people, but at the end of the day, we are looking at war and military strategy and logistics and movements. Okay, some other big news that happened this weekend was Ukraine-Russia war latest. Kremlin says French seizure of tanker bordering on piracy as it vows response. So again, when we look at this, see more footage of that. Kind of crazy. I don't know what the music is there. But anyways, as we continue looking at that, Kremlin says the French seizure of the tanker bordering on piracy and vows response. UK and France intercept suspected Russian oil tanker in the Atlantic, Macron says. Zelensky says that Ukraine is facing a limited window to hold effective peace talks with Russia ahead of the winter. Russian oil refineries and the energy infrastructure hit in Ukraine drone attacks. And then Ukraine denies Russia's claim that they struck Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant and calls it a propaganda ploy. But at the same time, we also understand that when we look at, just recently, we also have, what was it, Zelensky? He had made this tweet. We'll try to find it. It was one of his bigger ones here. Might be hard to find it now. But it was essentially, he had called out to the United States to continue paying them to continue this war. Zelensky asking America for war money. Let's just see if it pops up. Yeah, of course it won't. Yeah. Ultimately, that's kind of, when we're looking at all of this, though, that was a big moment. I think I bookmarked it, so maybe we'll find that later. But a lot of big stories there. So again, when we look at the maps, and when we look at the geography of everything that's happening, where these strikes are happening in the Middle East, a lot of activity is happening in Israel, Lebanon, and then Iran. Okay, so there's been, in the last 24 hours, there's been 264 strikes. There's been active theaters, about 6 of them, and hot events, about 15. In the last hour, looks like we've had more of a minimum. Okay, so again, when we look at all of this, we have to pay attention. So let's look a little bit at what's happening over here in Israel. And when we look at southern Lebanon, you can see all of the different stories that have come out in the media. Okay, so we look at all of this, and you can see where these stories kind of come from. Okay, so just get this out of the way. IDF, following the sirens that sounded at 1:35 a.m. in several areas in northern Israel, the IAF intercepted 2 projectiles that crossed from Lebanon. And then we look at some of these other stories as well. Again, interceptor launch at an aerial target. We have the IDF saying that the rocket attack on Metula, northern Israel, caused no injuries. But these were recorded events that happened over the past 24 hours. Okay, and then we have Tyre. This is where this is over here. And this was critical. Several severe damage was reported at Jabal Amal Hospital in Tyre, southern Lebanon, after heavy Israeli strikes in the nearby areas. So again, that was huge. And then just north of that, we also have all these other stories that branched off. Hezbollah rocket struck near Israeli forces operating in southern Lebanon a short while ago, according to the IDF. And you can look at all of these. So this is, again, warstrikes.com is where I'm finding this entire map, this live map. This was a ballistic missile targeting IDF positions in southern Lebanon. A failed interception attempt was carried out. The IDF claims that it impacted nets to Israeli positions. So again, that's just kind of what's going on in Israel right now. And then again, we have Nabatea. And again, this is a big location. It's almost kind of central Lebanon, just south. It's just barely in southern Lebanon, almost in central Lebanon. 2 Israeli airstrikes targeted the town of Nabatea al-Fawqa, southern Lebanon. And again, 2 Israeli airstrikes targeted there. So lots of big events happening in Lebanon. That's where you need to keep your eyes on. And then again, of course, we have Beirut. So Beirut is where everybody's eyes are at right now. Everybody's waiting for something to happen in Beirut. Trump lashes out at Netanyahu. An explosive Lebanon call blocks Beirut strike escalation. At least Trump is trying to block it. But we'll see if that actually persists. Beirut has always been essentially owned by the Israelis overall, militarily, and they've always had a pretty good control and stronghold over that area. And then over here in Tehran, Iran, Israel UN Ambassador Danny Danan was also struck. So again, there was an ambassador, or not a ambassador, but he was a high-level person of Iran, who was also struck here. Oil prices jump as Iran suspends peace talks. And then again, another story tells us, where is it? And again, yes. So yeah, that's basically what's happening in Iran. And so these were the big strikes that happened over the weekend. Okay, and then when we look at the maritime traffic, it tells us essentially the same story. So when we look at the Red Sea right now, this is where Iran wants to close it off. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and this is where the Iranians are, this choke point right here where the cursor is circling, this is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait where the Iranians want to close this off. So when we look at all of this, this is what's kind of causing all of this. This entire Israel-Lebanon war is causing potentially the closure of the Suez Canal as well. So this whole entire Red Sea here, the entire Red Sea, where the cursor is, where you see all of this traffic north to south, all of this is going to be closed according to the Iranians. They're going to close the Suez Canal, which is right here where the cursor is, as we zoom in. Again, you can already see a lot of crude oil tankers that are anchored down in this area. Not a lot of traffic going through this strait. And at the same time, we also have Port Said, where a lot of different crude oil tankers are also anchored right now. So again, this tells us a story that this war is getting hot. And at the end of the day, the Red Sea could end up closing up. And so what you're going to see is a lot of these ships are going to end up going to Cyprus, and they'll be clustered around the Cyprus area, the ones that are stuck in this area. And then the others are going to be forced to essentially go to this southern tip of Africa over here, where you see all of this other congestion and traffic. Or they're going to have to go beyond that blockade that the U.S. military set up. Got a lot of different clusters right here as well. A lot of fishing boats. But ultimately, we're looking at crude oil tankers, everything that you see that's red. So all of these red dots and red triangles are crude oil tankers, LNG, liquefied natural gas, chemical tankers, and that's really what we're looking at. So again, same area, a little bit less clustering than we had last week in Fujairah, near the Fujairah area. This is where a lot of ships will dock here when the insurers aren't feeling confident about the war and where it's going. But again, this entire blockade is pretty much right here. So a lot of U.S. military craft right here, and then a lot of vessels, again, are not able to do all of the flow through right here through the Strait of Hormuz. So again, and Iran is now threatening to close this again. So again, they're using these choke points as a strategic front against the United States, because if the United States and Israel continue this war, then it kind of screws up the entire economy, right? The entire global economy. And the longer that the global economy is closed, then the longer, again, or the more that everybody else can blame the United States. So that's kind of what the strategy of the Iranians are right now. So again, when we look at some of these flights, and what's happening here, I wanted to track this flight as well. A lot of interesting things happening here. This flight was going in lots of circles earlier today, and so I did want to track this as we zoom out. But this was in the Strait of Hormuz area. Waiting for this map to kind of load up here so you can see what I was looking at. Of course, it's not going to load because I'm on a live stream. But as we look at all of the traffic here, this was a United States Air Force C-130. And again, we're always tracking the C-130s because a lot of U.S. military cargo vessels are always going here. So basically, this area is right in the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. There we go. This is the Gulf of Oman right here. And if you notice, lots of circles were made here. So again, that means that the airspace was pretty unsafe in this area. Okay, at the end of the day, it could have been training operations as well, but I seriously doubt it, especially when all of these crude oil tankers were pretty much, as we just saw, all vessels up right here, all anchored up right here. So you're seeing a lot of different traffic, maybe some care packages being launched, maybe some deployments, lots of activity happening in this area. And then all these aircraft are also moving northward through Saudi Arabia. Some of these could be UAE flights. A lot of the time, that's what you'll see. And then a lot of them are moving up to Europe. So when you see this pattern of all these U.S. C-130s and UAE flights and things like that, all these different countries, all of these different flights that are, in coalition with the United States, again, Abu Dhabi, we're looking at potentially more strikes. Okay, so when they're moving northward to Europe, especially U.S. aircraft, that's when you have to be paying attention to potential strikes that could be happening next. All important things to pay attention to. So again, when we look at the crude oil markets, this is kind of how they were affected. WTI crude is at $92.27, Brent crude at $94.98. We have Mervyn crude at $94.43. And then crypto is also big right now. At the same time, everybody's waiting on the Clarity Act, as we've been covering. Fear and Greed Index right at 32, so everybody's a little bit cautious at the moment, kind of just in limbo mode. Bitcoin's at 73,418, so no real action yet with crypto. And then again, when we look at the stock market today, Dow Jones, the S&P 500, NASDAQ clinch records as Nvidia surges, U.S.-Iran optimism returns. So again, the U.S. stocks rose to fresh records on Monday as investors eyed the U.S.-Iran peace talks and the debut of Nvidia's new laptop chip. That was the RTX, I believe it was called. Again, we covered that. If you go on goldsharkmedia.com, or if you follow Goldshark Media on YouTube, you can watch that short, or you can follow that on Rumble as well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed just above the flat line. The S&P 500 rose nearly 0.3% to close above the $7,600 mark. The tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite drifted 0.4% higher as announcements from the Computex Taipei conference boosted tech stocks, offsetting weaknesses elsewhere. Nvidia shares jumped over 6%, while software stocks also saw sizable gains. So again, the S&P 500 ended at around $7,599.96, and the Dow Jones is sitting right above $50,000, $51,078. And then gold today, pretty much right in the same place it was last week, $4,485.62 an ounce. And silver went up a little bit today, $75.16 an ounce. So pretty big. So the markets are pretty much waiting for this entire Iran war to be over. I thought this was kind of funny, so I'm going to comment on it. This is from Suppressed News. They made this video of, this was, I don't know what event this was. Israel brought Christians from around the world to the Knesset to cry and beg God to forgive their nations for not supporting Israel enough. This has gone too far beyond politics. At this point, it feels like almost ritualistic. And so I agreed. And I had commented on this. I said Zionism is mental illness. And again, had 660 people who agreed with me there.
Father God,
so again, this is the clip there and what we're looking at.
For the anti-Semitism all around
Take a look at this. This is just kind of wild.
On behalf of it, and we bless Israel. And Father, I ask that you raise up righteous politicians,
try not to cringe,
righteous influencers, righteous journalists, that they would speak the truth. And Father, I ask for a Jerusalem prayer breakfast in Germany, in your name. Amen.
This guy's so annoying, because look at his last name. How irritating. Giving the Ecker name a bad name. Like, this is, like, dude, like, this is a Christian. He's not even really Jewish from what he's, this is a Shabbos Goy to me. And again, a Harold Eckert. And this is why I don't have the T on my last name. But listen to this guy.
To you, on behalf of Germany and on behalf of Europe. And I'm crying to you, have mercy upon Germany, have mercy upon Europe. We promised never again. Now it's happening again. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in Germany and in Europe again. Have mercy upon Germany. Have mercy upon Europe. I repent for Germany. I repent for Europe. And ask for your grace to help us turn around.
Please.
Make room for repentance.
Give it a rest,
in the church, first of all, and in our governments and nations. Lord, have mercy. Amen.
Yeah, Father, would you have mercy on the United Kingdom?
Yeah, but they don't pray to Jesus Christ. Isn't that the interesting part? They're all Christians, but they don't pray to Christ. Their Lord isn't Jesus Christ. If they know anything about the Jewish religion, the Jews don't worship Christ. So who are they praying
Lord,
to?
Forgive us for the way we've turned our back on Israel and not defended the Jewish people. And we've allowed anti-Semitism
to like a humiliation
run
ritual
on the streets of our nation. Father, forgive the church for being silent and therefore complicit in what is taking place.
Two different religions.
The hearts of our leaders in both government
There's
and
Catholics,
the church, along
and then
with the
Christian
people of our
Zionists,
nation,
and then Jews.
Back
They're
to
all
honoring
different.
you and your word, so that as a nation we would once again
Catholics
stand
don't believe in
with,
any of this.
support, and be a friend to Israel and to the Jewish people.
Father
Get
God,
a load of this. This is
as
unreal.
we're standing here today, we want to
Sarah Zhu
bring
from China.
to you, Lord, on the behalf of all the Chinese people around the world. Lord, we come to you and we ask for your forgiveness and your mercy over us. Lord, please forgive us for all the things that we did not support Israel.
Oh my God. Unreal.
And I pray that you would turn the hearts of all the Chinese people, Lord. Speak to
You're Chinese. You have a completely different religion. How much are they paying you to say this? Put $7,000 in the bank account.
Lord, I especially want to pray that you will rise
Okay. You people clearly don't know who you're praying to. Ultimately, again, the reason it's so important to make this distinction is because all of these Christians, or, they call themselves evangelical Christians or Christian Zionists, they don't understand that the Jews do not worship Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. They worship Hashem, who is not Jesus Christ. They believe that Jesus Christ was a prophet and that he was a false prophet even. They believe that, again, when we look at the scriptures of the Torah and the Talmud, they don't believe that Christ is the Lord and Savior. They'd never acknowledged him as that. In fact, they were the ones who called for Jesus Christ to be crucified. When the Romans and Pontius Pilate asked, "Why do you want this man to be crucified?" And they said, "Oh, he's a false Messiah," they said. And so Pontius Pilate said, "Well, my hands are clean of this. You do with him what you will. You can have Barbarus, free Barbarus, or you can free Jesus Christ." And they freed Barbarus. And they said, and then the Jews even said, "His blood be on our name and our children." And so literally, the Jews called for Christ's crucifixion. And I'm talking about mostly the Pharisees who convinced the Jewish people of that time to essentially kill their own king. And that is why they even pinned the sign above Jesus Christ's head that said, "King of the Jews." And so whether a lot of the time that was really meant to be mockery when you look at the histories of that, but you have to understand that the Jews do not worship Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. Again, I'm not an anti-Semite. I am not, an anti-Jew person, but this is honestly just complete mental illness. When we're looking at this level of deception and, believing that these are the same religions, this Judeo-Christian myth, it doesn't exist, and it never did. And so that's why I played this. It's because, again, I got 662 likes on this reply where I said Zionism is mental illness. I got 6,835 views. Ultimately, it's kind of true, because what's happening to the Jewish religion is it has been subverted for the intentions of the Schofield Bible, which has been rewritten to change the entire course of Christianity and history, specifically to allow for what you're seeing happen in Gaza and Lebanon today. And so it's important to make this distinction and to realize that religions can be subverted. You have Christian Zionists and you have Christian evangelicals and Protestants who are believing in all of this, but the Jews do not believe in the same thing. And they worship a completely different set of laws. They don't worship the 10 Commandments. They worship the Noahide laws, the 7 Noahide laws. And some will say, well, they're the same thing. Well, they're really not. Because one of the laws of the Noahide laws is that if you do not follow the Noahide laws, then you should be put to death. And so all of these things it's very interesting when you look at the distinctions and the differences between these religions and this ethnocentricity that has taken over and subverted the minds of the masses. So had to cover that. Thought it was rather interesting too. Thought it was rather important too. So now I wanted to look at some other bookmarked videos that I saw over the weekend that I found interesting here. Putin vows full support for those sharing traditional values and relocating to Russia. People who share traditional values and face pressure in their own countries will be granted full support if they decide to relocate, work, and raise children in Russia, President Vladimir Putin.
Unfortunately, in the whole number of countries, traditional family values are now being phased out. And we're going to provide support to those who come to live and work in Russia after facing such pressure in other countries. You're welcome.
Sorry about that.
Unfortunately, in the whole number of countries, traditional family values are now being phased out. And we're going to provide support to those who come to live and work in Russia after facing such pressure in other countries. You're welcome.
So again, Vladimir Putin, a lot of people, the Americans today, the Lindsey Grahams and those around President Trump will say that the Russians are the enemy. The Russians are the bad guys. The Russians, we need to support Ukraine because of what the Russians are doing to Ukraine. But Ukraine, they struck first. Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has taken billions of dollars worth of American taxpayer dollars to pay for this war. That you should have never had to pay for this war. In Ukraine, using Ukraine as a proxy to fight the Russians, when Russia is an Orthodox Christian country today. What's interesting is that America is more of a communist country today than Russia is today. And so you have to look at all of these things. And so we're being told that these are the bad guys. And why is that? When Vladimir Putin himself is saying, hey, if you're a Christian, if you're tired of the woke agenda in America or elsewhere in Europe, then you can come to Russia. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be fighting on the front lines for the Russians, probably. They will probably conscript you, and you will probably fight for the Russians. But the point is that the Orthodox Christian Russians today, it is a new Russia. And Mother Russia should be respected to a certain degree, and we could take a lot of notes. And we should be allies with Russia. Why are we not allies with Russia? Why does it make sense that we are enemies with Russia? When, again, they're the second biggest nuclear superpower on the planet, and we're number one. Hello? It's over. If we were to be allies, it'd be over. And if we could be two, unified Orthodox Christian countries, then that would be a completely different future that we'd be living in than what we're living in today, where you have $5 gas prices and where you're getting these 20-year potential wars over and over and over again with each presidency. Again, we had Iraq, we had Afghanistan, all of these wars. We had Vietnam before that. So you think about what this has really done to the United States. What have we really done? We've depleted our military beyond 5 years. Let's take a look at this short. I wanted to show you this. So check this out. The entire United States military has been brought back by like 5 years. Oh, sorry about that. Jeez. And before we get
There's a new study from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We have a line here. Land attack missile terminal high altitude area defense and Patriots, heavily used in this war, will take 3 or more years from today to return to pre-war inventory levels.
3 years. It's going to take 3 years for the U.S. military to restock on our entire weapons stockpile. It's going to take 3 years, at least. And while the Iranians, because they don't use the Rockefeller currency, they don't use the U.S. dollar, they're able to build out all of these drones and these FPV systems super quick. And so we're not able to do that. You pay for an FPV drone in America, you're paying $3 million for it. And Iran, you're paying a completely different price for it. So again, let's go on with this.
Pre-war inventory levels. The Pentagon has a lot of bombs and missiles that they can use if President Trump decides to go back to war. But how big an issue is the inventory?
Peter, it would be a huge issue if we were in a conventional war against China or Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
Because some of those would be immediately needed.
Yeah, so precisely. What if we were to be in a war with China or Russia? What if we needed to? Which we could. Think about Greenland. You've heard Trump talk about Greenland, and it is a fact that the Russians and the Chinese do want to take Cuba and Greenland over the United States, because if we don't take Greenland and Cuba, it will be the Russians and it will be the Chinese. And then what do? How do we defend ourselves then? From illegal immigration, from Chinese and Russian immigrants coming in. Think about all of that. And not even that, then there are nuclear submarines being right off of our shores. That's not good. And so when we are depleting our military, putting our assets and all of our tax dollars towards this Iran war, which is pretty much unwinnable because there's 90 million citizens in Iran, it's an unwinnable war. And we are fighting this war for who? Again, in the words of Donald Trump, this war is for Israel. This war is for Kuwait. This war is for Saudi Arabia. This war is for Iraq. This war is for everybody else but the United States. And so I'm not against having wars that we can win, but when we're fighting wars on the other side of the planet in a completely different hemisphere, trying to control the Strait of Hormuz when we already had it under control, but then we lost it because we started striking all of these different countries and specifically Tehran, it makes no sense. So we need to maybe dial it back a bit. So again, anyways, what else is new? So again, this is more on the House 2027 NDAA. This is the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2027. This is HR 8800 that Alex Jones is talking about here. I wanted to play about 3 minutes of this because he does a good little summary of this in just a few minutes here. So again, this is more on that.
In the first step towards shifting aid further into the shadows, the House 2027 National Defense Authorization Act would all but fuse the two countries' armed forces together. And it literally does
We've
that.
never done this
they'll
before.
Coordinate, share intelligence, which is already
With
going on.
any other country.
Do it all, but then the funding will come out of a partnership, but the Pentagon and the U.S. taxpayer pays for it. So when you see Netanyahu going, well, we're no longer going to get aid from Congress, we're going to wean ourselves off of that. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see that. But now we're in a partnership in joint weapons development and intelligence. It's in the Defense Authorization Act. You can go read it for yourself that they are merging, and then it's going to be in a secret budget. And as soon as I was reading this, when this broke Friday, I went, wait a minute. I've seen Netanyahu on multiple shows say, but very matter of fact, but it sounds very reasonable. Oh, we're just going to have partnerships in weapon development now and share from the profits of this. And then you read it, the Pentagon's going to say, here's our most secret systems, avionics, AI, weapons, missiles, bombs.
Stupid. This is treason.
And then Israel will give us one little piece of one of their things, and then we give them everything, and then they get to sell it and make profit from it. So they're literally coming in to even take over the piece of the military-industrial complex pie.
And you understand, if they own the military, they own the entire country at this point.
That's the keys to the kingdom right there. So this is even more bold than I thought. I mean, this is wild. The U.S. and Israel already work together heavily on missiles defense, but this provision would greatly expand the coordination to seemingly every area of the defense tech, including AI. And it's all in there. It says everything.
Total treason.
Now listen to me. When I read this and read the legislation, the key sections, I was like, oh, my God, that's word for word. Netanyahu said, it's like, oh, we got some really good missile defense. We're going to give some of that to the U.S., and then we're going to get a little bit of their stuff. And you read it, it's everything. So the U.S. gives all its secret weapons to Israel, lets them into the Pentagon in the secret weapons areas, all the catalogs, the systems, the development systems, and then says, you now share in the money from this, and no one can know what you're paid because it's classified. So this document says total integration, synchronization, meaning live time. When you hear that, that means no buffer.
This is a conquest. If you want to know what a conquest looks like, this is how it's done.
Access to everything, highest Q-level clearance, okay? At the universities, at the defense contractors, at the Pentagon, down to the armed services, down to live telemetry, live drone footage, live AI information, all of it.
Again, what is that? How does that affect, Americans when it comes to your bank accounts? How does it affect you with your cars? Do they have a kill switch now? The government has a kill switch for every vehicle required after the year 2027. Seems to be the year 2027 when America is losing all of their rights. Ironically, we're 250 years into the United States and our independence, and this is the way we're celebrating it, with selling our country out to Israel. And so, people, opinions may vary on that. But when you look at this, it is pure fact, and you can never argue that. Again, this is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2027, HR 8800. And they want you to not talk about that or know about it. So we need to say no. And Thomas Massie has already made moves to say no against it. Moving on to the next story. This is happening in the UK today. Breaking news, body cam footage of the arrest of Henry Nowak, who had been stabbed moments prior to by Vikram Digwa. So again, the whole backstory on this and the context is that essentially this man was stabbed, and he was telling the police, I can't breathe. And the police said, no, you weren't stabbed. You weren't stabbed. And they just basically believed whatever they were told by these other foreigners, these Muslims at the time. And they'd said, oh, no, he was being a racist. And so the police took the side of the Muslims who had made the call. They called the police, and they basically didn't take this guy seriously. So again, this is the body cam footage on that. Interesting to always break these down as a former cop myself. So I'm still a cop, basically.
Jumped over these fences and stuff like that.
And he's up here. Away, mate.
He's obviously... He's fallen from there and he slipped from there.
There's other shooters left over there, mate. What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother. He's took my turban off. Started grabbing my head.
Are you injured?
Yeah.
So these guys just stabbed this kid that's on the ground. And essentially, they're saying, oh, yeah, he grabbed my hair. He grabbed my hair. He was a racist.
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, a little bruise.
All right, just step back a little bit for me.
Yeah, right.
Someone flag these down.
So this guy's literally bleeding out on the ground right now.
Got this stud.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we?
I was in bed asleep.
First of all, the first thing that's wrong with these cops is you didn't even separate the parties. You should have, like, your other officers should be talking to these guys on the other side, And when it comes to this victim here, you need to be saying, where were you stabbed? Where were you stabbed? He's not asking them.
Grab his other arm.
What's
happened to you, right? You've been stabbed?
Again, I've been stabbed.
Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
And then the cop says, I don't think you have, mate. So again, we'll rewind that again.
Been stabbed. You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
You can see blood on his hand. Or dirt, maybe.
Hand?
I guess it could be dirt.
I can't breathe. Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
Third or fourth time now this kid has said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
This is like
Fifth time. And they're just worried about coughing. Because they're believing everything these Muslims are saying in the background. So let's rewind it and let's listen to what these guys are saying in the background.
This is like times this has happened to us. We've been walking, we parked
So if you heard that, he said something about racist. It sounded like this guy in the back. One of them had said something about racist right here.
90 foot.
So they're blaming this kid that they just stabbed for being a racist. And that's, again, they're saying they never even stabbed this person. All these guys. They called the police. Again, these cops still haven't said yet or asked the question to this victim, where have you been stabbed? Maybe they think he's intoxicated. Maybe he was intoxicated. I don't really know. We're going to find out from the autopsy report because this individual died. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to take your suspects seriously and your prisoners seriously. And these guys, these police officers, these UK cops, were listening to everything that the Muslims were telling them, who had called the police and called this in and started calling this kid a racist that they had just stabbed.
Where is it you think you've been stabbed? In the face? Oh, no, but...
So it takes the female cop, after how long of this video? 1 minute and 30 seconds of them getting on scene. It takes her 1 minute and 31 seconds to finally ask the question, where have you been stabbed? And they couldn't care less. There's no urgency either.
Where do you think you've been stabbed? In the face? Oh, no, but we have to check, don't we?
No.
In the face?
Just get these to back off, get their details on that, and I'll keep hold of them.
Yeah, you should have had them separated.
Should we...
Keep you on your side, mate. You better retrieve then.
What's also interesting is that they don't even have him in the correct recovery position. The recovery position is putting somebody on their right side. You put them on their right side. This kid's on his left side. That's not even the correct recovery position.
I'm keeping him on his side. We were set up when we had him here, but he didn't like it.
And he's just bleeding out.
What's your name, mate? At the moment, you are under arrest. That's for assault, so you do not have to say anything. May harm in defence. If you do not mention when questioned, it's up to which you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, all right? It's gonna be
and they're reading him his rights as he's literally dying and bleeding out. There's no urgency in these police officers at all. None.
They just want you to call it.
No paramedics, by the way. No EMS. No EMS seem to have been called.
We've got this male. He's been beat up. Are we able to get an ambulance, please?
Are we able to get an ambulance, please? Can we please get an ambulance? We have somebody who says that they've been stabbed, but we do not think they've been stabbed at all. Please get an ambulance over here. Unreal.
Pupils aren't even reacting.
Like, talk about just injustice when you look at all of this. Crazy. On a more positive note, again, and according to the story here, we'll actually look more into that. Just more context before we wrap this story up. Again, this happened in the UK. But just to give the full context, the ex-post from Politics UK shares body cam footage showing police handcuffing 18-year-old Henry Nowak on the ground as he repeatedly states he has been stabbed and cannot breathe, moments after the altercation in Southampton. In December of 2025, Nowak, a first-year University of Southampton student walking home from a night out, was stabbed 5 times by 23-year-old Vikram Digwa using a 21-centimeter ceremonial blade. Digwa falsely claimed to officers that Nowak had racially abused and assaulted him first. Digwa was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a 21-year minimum term on June 1st, 2026. Today, his mother was convicted of assisting an offender, and the Independent Office for Police Conduct is investigating the initial police response to the dying victim. So again, to really break this down, these cops had no urgency. It took the female officer 1.5 minutes to ask the victim, where were you stabbed? And then on top of that, they didn't even believe him. So they didn't take him seriously. Maybe they thought he was just drunk or intoxicated or on drugs or something. Immediately, though, the strange part about it is that they completely didn't take the call seriously. And they said, "No, you haven't been stabbed, mate." And the other cop had said that. So this just goes to show, in law enforcement, you got to be more careful, and you got to actually have some urgency, some common sense. And it just goes to show that the UK police just, maybe they'll learn their lesson that you ought to, take these calls more seriously instead of just believing all of these illegal immigrants who are invading the country and trying to destroy the entire justice system within. So again, more of a positive note, this is breathtaking. The church's marble floor is covered entirely in tombs of the 400 Knights of the Order, Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, Valletta in 1608. So I thought this was kind of cool. When you look at this, these are all the saints. Again, why can't we have this architecture today in 2026? Why can't we do this today? We could have such amazing architecture. And again, none of these people had an architecture degree. They just built it. Why don't we do the same? Again, this comes from Code Zenek in Mordoro. Red ghosts have appeared over Tibet, one of the rarest phenomenons on Earth. It looks like science fiction or AI generated, but it's 100% real footage. These are so-called red spirits, massive electrical discharges in the mesosphere. Triggered by powerful lightning strikes below, they last just a fraction of a second, take the shape of a jellyfish or columns, and glow red thanks to the igniting nitrogen. The phenomenon was recently captured over Tibet, Shannon region, at an altitude of over 5,000 meters above sea level. One of the most beautiful and rarest atmospheric phenomena in the world. So again, pretty interesting. Again, got to turn the music off there. I didn't want to get copyright. When we look at that, it is very cool. Earth itself is quite amazing when you look at it. Lots of cool things about our world. Or maybe they're just UFOs. Who knows? But very cool. Again, what else is new? So when we look at some of these other stories, Pentagon's worst nightmare, China's unjammable AI drone swarms. China just dropped HGSTR, the AI algorithm letting drone swarms autonomously detect, coordinate, and annihilate targets, even when jammed into total comms blackout and near zero visibility. Heterogeneous graph brain tags every object by class, friendly UAV, search zone, enemy target, unlike the West's outdated everything in data swarms. 6.6 millisecond decisions. Memory module stores last known positions, so swarm keeps fighting autonomously when links die. And then there's predictive hunting, which estimates hidden enemy locations from terrain, patterns, and prior intel. No ground control needed. Then there's also dominant sim results, 100% target hit probability in testing, showcasing China's edge in next-generation swarm intelligence. Do you think the U.S. can catch up to China in drone AI technology? So pretty crazy when you look at that. And again, here's some of the architecture behind that. Pretty wild. So again, the United States does not have this kind of technology yet. China is winning the military technological race. But we could be here and doing all of the same things, but we're wasting our money on this Iran war. So while China is building up their infrastructure and they're building up their military, the United States is paying for an Iran war on the other side of the planet for other Gulf countries in the Middle East. Again, we could be building this and we are not. So it's not like we don't have the capabilities to do this. We absolutely do. We're just not doing it. Breaking IRGC urgent warning. So again, this is from the IRGC. And this is what they had said. Okay, this is from Solomon Ahmed. He posted this on X 6 hours ago. And again, this is a statement from the IRGC to the Israeli forces. We announced the settlers in North-occupied Palestine that the area specified in the attached map, which includes the Upper Galilee, the Lower Galilee, the Golan, and Haifa, has been a closed military zone as of this moment. If your criminal leaders target the southern suburb of Beirut or the city of Beirut, this area will be a target for attacks by the Iranian armed forces. And we say to the honorable Palestinian people, the time has come to reclaim your land. Our fire is at your service. The departure of settlers from the occupied territories may be a prelude to your return to it. Intermediate evacuation order. To the residents of the settlements in northern occupied Palestine, it is announced that there are marked on the attached map, which includes the Upper Galilee, the Lower Galilee, the Golan Heights, and Haifa, is nearby determined defined as a closed military zone. Should your criminal leaders attack the southern Daya of Beirut or the city of Beirut, this area will become a target for the Iranian armed forces. And to the esteemed Palestinian people, we say, the time has come to reclaim your land. Our fire is at your service. The departure of the settlers from the occupied territories may be a preliminary step for your return to it. So the IRGC is not backing down. Hezbollah is not backing down. There is still the fight going on for southern Lebanon as we speak. So this war in Iran doesn't seem like it's going to be ending too quickly. Israel just committed a massacre in Lebanon, just a few meters away from a hospital. Children killed, women under the rubble. We covered that story. Again, we covered this a little bit when we were talking about the stock market. The laptop hasn't changed in 30 years. Nvidia just changed it. RTX Spark is the first PC chip ever. This is the RTX 5070 level GPU, 128 gigabytes unified memory. Only 128 gigabytes? No, I think that's supposed to be for the RAM, though. 1 petaflop of local AI, thin, light, barely throttles unplugged. Your AI agent lives on the machine 24/7, no cloud. This is step 1 of the agentic AI PC, and everyone else is about to copy it. So again, let's take a listen to Jensen Wang explaining this new tech, the new PC for gaming.
Of course.
And a lot more
I got to show you the most beautiful part, which is video games. It's also the closest to our heart. This is Forza. This is 007, by the way. The new 007 game, I'm looking forward to playing it. I look a little bit like him. Ladies and gentlemen, NVIDIA's RTX Spark laptops. Now,
this all runs off of a certain microprocessor, a microchip.
I have too many things in my pocket. 太多东西了. Okay, all right. This is the most amazing chip the world has ever built. This is the N1X that we built in partnership with MediaTek. I think I saw Rick earlier. This is N1X. This is a beautiful chip. This is a chip that, frankly, would take 33 years to build. And the reason for that is because 100% of NVIDIA software stack runs here. If you want to run digital biology, no problem. If you want to do seismic processing, no problem. You want astrophysics, no problem. Everything associated with CUDA, all the physics, all the biology, all the genomics, all the AI, no problem. All the computer graphics, no problem. Every single application NVIDIA has ever created and every single application that Windows has ever run. Microsoft and NVIDIA meticulously optimized everything so that this computer literally runs everything the world has ever created, plus it now runs agents. An incredible computer. I'm so proud of it.
And this is what's going to replace your job. This is what's going to replace millions of jobs throughout the entire planet. This is why you're spending your tax dollars for more AI data centers so that that can exist. But, you know, to each their own. Still interesting developments in technology. Again, we covered that. Marine Le Pen erupts into the French parliament. I don't understand why foreigners who break the law are allowed to stay here, she quotes. What compels us to keep them? So she had said this, and she got a pretty big round of applause. It's like Western civilization is waking up. So I'm going to rewind this a little bit, transcribe it, because I forgot she was speaking in French here. I still can't understand, she says. You can tell us that the cases targeted by this bill are not the cases of the OQTF. So what? How does that make it? The presence on our territory and the continued presence of foreigners who have broken the law, who have made victims, who have committed serious offenses, who have committed crimes, why should these people be allowed to stay on the territory? And then, of course, you have people of the French parliament literally screaming at this lady against her. They're like against this idea of like not having illegal foreigners in your country committing crimes, serious offenses. And she's getting like berated because of it. Mostly a round of applause later. What compels us to keep people who have broken the law on the territory? First, the law of hospitality. The second, the law that protects our fellow citizens. Never a single argument from you on this subject. We believe that it restores the dignity of the French to send a clear signal. If you come to our country, then you must respect the French people and French law. So again, France is starting to wake up. They're seeing the chaos that happens with illegal immigration, when mass migration. Maybe the world is starting to wake up. Meanwhile, back on U.S. soil, an absolute massive teen takeover at Clearwater Beach in Florida has led to a 17-year-old being hospitalized with gunshot wounds. Hundreds of teens swarmed the beach, then began beating each other on the first weekend of summer. Where are the parents? Seriously. Like, honest to God, imagine you're on a vacation in Florida. You're on a vacation in Florida with your family, and you got to deal with these teen takeovers. These have been rampant across the entire country for weeks now. You just heard gunshots. Insane. Intolerable. This is what happens when you have no law and order in your country. We must have law and order and some kind of justice system, or that will be rampant. This was kind of an interesting and funny clip. Indian chess master cheats against a little boy and gets totally caught.
Have to respond to a check, but the Vonderan caught cheating right in front of a 10-year-old kid. This Indian international chess master. The kid puts the Vonderan's king in check with his knight, and according to chess rules, you have to respond to a check. But the Vonderan moves a different piece instead. He figured he's just a kid. What will he even notice? But the kid catches it immediately, raises his hand, and calls the arbiter over. And the Vonderan acts in front of the arbiter like he didn't do anything on purpose, like everything happened by mistake. But when the arbiter reviews the situation, he realizes something fishy is going on, declares Thavandiran's move illegal, and gives the kid 2 extra minutes as a penalty. That's when Thavandiran realizes winning is now impossible. So, accepting defeat, he extends his hand in front of the kid. But here, the kid doesn't shake his hand. The kid wonders if he's extending his hand for a draw, so he only shakes hands after getting confirmation. Caught cheating.
So seriously, they're getting caught cheating. You got teen takeovers. You got crimes in the UK happening all over the place, and then they don't get in trouble for it until years later. Seriously, what is going on? The world needs to wake up. I like this clip from Rupert Lowe. This is, again, in the UK. I think he's going to be a great leader for the United Kingdom. I want the world to hear what we heard. So, again, this is pretty good. I really like this guy.
Survivors who are sitting behind us in the hall. This debate is about them. As you quite rightly say, it's not about politics. I want the world to hear what we heard during the 2 weeks of our independent rape gang inquiry hearings, an inquiry that should never have needed to happen. I sincerely urge this Parliament to listen to the testimonies from these brave survivors and to act, to finally act.
If you don't know the context, he's referring to the 500,000 little girls who were raped, and on record of that, according to these Pakistani rape gangs that existed in the UK because of all of this mass migration that had happened, and then basically the dissemination of law and order in the UK.
The first testimony, he took his pants down, penetrated me, had sex with me. He then stopped before ejaculation. He picked up the bottle of Jack Daniels, which was now empty, and he forced it up inside me. He broke the glass while he was there. At that point,
women need to hear this.
About 12, nearly 13. Another testimony.
This is what's happening. This is what happens when you let illegal criminals in your country
to orally and vaginally rape me, taking it in turns to pin down my arms and my legs. When the assault ended, the men hit me repeatedly, threatened to find me, kill me, and harmed my loved ones if I ever told anybody what had happened.
Again, he's reading the testimony from the police report of one of these victims, one of these rape victims.
The white girls, the Christian girls, were viewed as having fewer morals or lower values, whereas Muslim girls were described by some of the men as having dignity and higher moral standing. These comparisons were used to justify the way I was treated and to further humiliate and control me. Another, she was a white woman herself, who I imagine may have been groomed, and has obviously now married into the family, shouting obscenities at us. Throughout the whole sentencing, she was constantly saying, "Fucking liars, lying white bitches." She said to me that God will be the witness for what happens to me. Another, race did play a part and motivated the selection or demographic of the victims. Throughout my exploitation, the other girls I encountered, or who were abused alongside me, were almost exclusively white.
It's so important to play this because in the media, they tell you that this is not a problem. They tell you that illegal immigration is not a problem. They tell you that it has nothing to do with race, but it does. And that is what people need to be willing to say, as hard as it is to say.
Another, she had a baby by him, and his dad was an imam. His dad knew. And he got his son married and said that he wasn't allowed to see the child. They look after their own community. Another. Over the course of the abuse, I was raped by multiple police officers in different parts of the country.
That's crazy.
Another. He put a cigarette out on the baby's face. Another. It started when I was 13. I was raped by probably about 600 or 700 different men over 3 years. Another. They would toot the horn of the car, and then a child would be taken to the front door by a staff member of the children's home. Another. I was bleeding from both my vagina and my back passage and was so swollen I could not sit down.
And again, I know this is graphic, but again, people need to hear this. People need to know what happens to your country when you let illegal immigrants come into your country, and especially the worst of illegal immigrants, like career criminals, really bad people.
I told hospital staff my drink had been spiked and I did not know what had happened because I was too afraid to tell the truth. They did not ask any questions. They gave me tablets and discharged me. I was 15 years old. Another. Things would escalate around Eid and holidays. Parties got bigger, got worse, got more violent. More people involved, more girls involved. The parties were just bigger. Another. The main clash that I kind of had with the religion side of it was I grew up as a Christian. I would wear my cross because it was something really special to me. It was just used as a way to break me down. They said, "Where is your God now? Has your God forsaken you?" Another.
That sounds like what the Jews said to Jesus Christ, by the way, when he was on the cross.
It was all of the white.
The story of Christianity, pure persecution.
I remember a man opening the back of a van.
Because we are the ones who
and
are
I saw
right.
15, 20 girls locked in dog cages. Another. Dogs were brought in and I couldn't move at all. I had nowhere to move. I think that was the scariest thing, was not having any concept of it. There were men around me, not horrified, not disgusted, not helping, but filming and laughing, making bets on whether the dog could actually rape me or not. And yes, I was raped by a dog. The man just
Again,
held my
these are
face.
testimonies and reports from these rape victims in the United Kingdom. And that's what Rupert Lowe is reading these out for the parliament, so that these people have to hear what they allowed to happen because of these mass migrations and everything that they allowed through legislation and via policy.
Stared me down straight in the eyes, and he wanted to see me break, and he did. Another. I just wanted to stop and not happen to any other children, and for people to actually act, to do something, and stop being so scared. I could continue for hours and hours. All of us in this building have a responsibility to finally act. Not to talk, but to act. Our Rape Gang Inquiry report will be released in the coming days. It will change Britain for good. Thank you.
What a hero he is. And anybody who disagrees just does not understand
Firstly, I would like
the severity of these problems. So Rupert Lowe, I salute you from the United States. Again, another big story, shocking former Polish ambassador Krzysztof Bielinski. Ukraine wants to become the second Israel in Europe. one big Israel after the war, and Poland has been colonized by Ukrainians in key positions. Former Polish ambassador Krzysztof Beliński strongly criticized Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's repeated boast that after winning the war, Ukraine will become the second Israel in Europe. One big Israel. He also claimed that Poland has been effectively colonized by Ukrainians, with people of Ukrainian origin, of Ukrainian connections, holding key positions in almost every major party. Halawanya, Samaniak, Badnar, Kazianiak, Kamiz, I can't pronounce some of these. The Institute of National Memory, rehabilitating UPA criminals, and other institutions. He warned that with 5 million plus Ukrainians already in Poland, the situation is becoming irreversible. This is brutal diagnosis. Zelensky is not promising peace. He wants a highly militarized second Israel, funded by Polish taxpayers, while Ukraine honors the UPA butchers who massacred tens of thousands of Poles. At the same time, Ukrainians have infiltrated Polish politics and institutions across the spectrum. Both PIS and PO/Tusk governments opened the doors to wide this legal migration. Poland has turned into the Ukropol of Polish Palestine in Europe. This is the demographic and political colonization happening in real time. He's speaking in Polish, so I'm just going to move on from that. But again, this is where a lot of that comes from originally. Again, this was a post that was made by Charlie Kirk on November 30th, 2023. And I'm going to end this live stream tonight with this. I was smeared as an anti-Semite and Holocaust denier for even broaching this topic. Turns out I was onto something. Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan for October 7th terrorist attack more than a year before it happened. Documents, emails, and interviews to show. But Israel's military and intelligence officials dismissed the plan as aspirational, considering it too difficult for Hamas to carry out. The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. The translated document, which was reviewed by the New York Times, did not set a date for the attack, but described a methodical assault designed to overwhelm the fortifications around the Gaza Strip, take over Israeli cities, and storm key military bases, including a division headquarters. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. So again, that's basically a quote from Charlie Kirk on November 30th, 2023, where he essentially lays out how October 7th happened. And here they tell you that October 7th was the precursor for all of this. So ultimately, that's where we'll end this stream, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. But be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and be sure to support the show. What do you think is going to come next with this Iran war? What do you think is going to come of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, for the fiscal year 2027, which is H.R. 8800? What do you think is coming with Trump's peace deal because of the Israeli-Lebanon strikes that are happening in Tyre and Nabatea and all these different towns and villages in southern Lebanon and the Golan Heights? What do you think is coming when it comes to the markets, the Dow Jones, when it comes to crypto? Ultimately, I think all of these things, it depends on Trump's willingness to take charge and to take lead over Netanyahu and this Israeli government at this current time. I stand with Joe Kent, who has been saying a lot of the same things. And ultimately, again, I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't hate anybody, but what I do hate is the lying of the media and, this entire war that should not be happening when we could be building our own AI drone swarm like the Chinese are doing, when we could have offshore AI data centers that are functional and efficient like the Chinese are doing, when we could have an Orthodox Christian country like the Russians are doing. We have to make changes as Americans, and these things need to be instituted. And, we need to learn from our brothers and sisters in Europe and then also in the Slavic countries, all of it. There needs to be real justice, law and order, and there needs to be mass remigration. All of these things need to exist, in my opinion. But what do you think? Am I right or am I wrong? Ultimately, that's all I have. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.